In today's topic, we're going to talk about entrepreneurial motivation. Specifically, we're going to look at entrepreneurial motivation and how that influences the pursuit of new venture ideas. There are three central pieces that we're going to look at: self-efficacy, cognitive motivation, and tolerance for ambiguity, and we'll connect each of these three with the opportunity analysis canvas. So self-efficacy is geared towards your belief that you can be effective in a certain scenario or situation. So it may sound like control, it may sound like confidence, but it's tied to a specific task. And it's a better predictor than confidence when you look at entrepreneurial success. So when we look at approaches for how do you do that effectively, how do you improve your efficacy? And for all of these elements, when we're looking at these pieces of mindset, motivation, and behavior, part of it may be assessing where you are. A more important part is how do you improve that? Even if you believe yourself to be high in some areas, you can probably still enhance or improve that. So one way we improve our self-efficacy is building some measure of experience. So if you want to be a good golfer, what might you do?
Practice.
You practice. You take some lessons. You enter some small competitions. You then compete in some larger competitions. You grow your way into it. Same thing with entrepreneurship. If you want to be a player, you begin doing the things that are accessible and that are stair steps to what it is that you want to do. For many people, it's interning with a startup. For many people, it's partnering or joining a startup, and then later it may be going on and doing your own startup. But it's building some level of experience and exposure and learning by doing. Role modeling is another piece, and this isn't necessarily let me bring in Bill Gates and let him inspire you. I don't think that works. Now, I will bring in some young entrepreneurs that are more similar to you. I think that works a lot better. What's your takeaway when Bill Gates comes in and tells you his story? He's a billionaire, it's awesome. Not going to happen to me. One, he may have a different skill set. He may have different interests. The era or the time may have been different. But if you talk with somebody that's close to your age, that has similar skills, that has similar interest, and that's had success, what might that do?
Inspire you?
That feels more achievable. That's something I can work with. That's something I can model. And so in that way, again, finding those role models, be they people you know, be they people that you meet, or find your way to, are certainly very helpful in building that efficacy. You get some level of confidence and some level of confidence applied in a certain situation when you see others that have done things that are similar. So with Edison, certainly exhibited this level of efficacy, and a lot of his quotes are worked around hard work. A lot of his quotes are geared towards repeated trying of things. What did he do? What did he do?
He invented the light bulb.
Oh, he did not invent the light bulb. Common mistake. What did he do with the light bulb?
He innovated.
He innovated it.
I was going to say he made it practical.
He made it practical and commercializable. So the light bulb had been invented some decades before he made a run at it. But what he did is he found a way to make the light bulb stay lit. Prior to his version, the light bulbs were staying lit for matters of seconds or minutes, and then they burn out. And you had to replace the bulb if you wanted light. So his contribution was that he made something that would last for hours and days. And that was something that you could sell and something that you could commercialize. But it happened through, again, this element of persistence and perseverance and belief that he could make it happen. There's a company that he founded, a large company, one of the world's largest companies.
General Electric.
General Electric, GE. So that was the product of this light bulb commercialization. He didn't name it after himself, as is the case with many founders. Why do you think that's the case?
So you can sell it.
So you could sell it, but people still buy things. But
Was it because he didn't invent the light bulb? And so you don't want to almost take credit for it because you just
well, General Electric did a lot more than light bulbs over time. But again, we would think and try and gauge, is there some level of ego that perhaps didn't play in his role? Now, Trump names everything after himself. Oprah, the humble, nice Oprah, names everything after herself. There's an ego. There's the ego there for a lot of entrepreneurs. Interesting that he didn't go that route. So when we look at this element of cognition and thinking, this is another element that we want to explore regarding motivations. Entrepreneurs that like to think, that like to solve problems, that want to collect and analyze information, tend to fare better in their entrepreneurial pursuits. Now, there is something called analysis paralysis. What do you think that is?
If you like overanalyze things.
You overanalyze things. Paralysis in the sense that there is no movement, but you're just going to think. You're going to write version 17 of your business plan, and you're going to write version 28 of your business plan, but you're never going to do anything. So that's not what we're advocating here. But what we are advocating here is that there is some interest and some motivation for analyzing, thinking, collecting data, doing your research, doing your homework, and then making some informed decisions from there. What is this? It's an invention from James Dyson that is a wheelbarrow with a bit of a different design. Why is this essentially a ball barrow more effective than a wheelbarrow?
Yeah, it has a larger range of motion.
Has a larger range of motion, and that you don't just have this little thin wheel that you're working on. It's bigger, you can move, it's more flexible.
It allows for better stability.
Better stability. You are, much like a big tire does or a wide tire does on a vehicle, you have more traction, you have more support, it's easier to move, you're not going to get stuck in ruts.
Easier to turn.
Turning radius is a lot easier, and we see the same design ring true. The wheelbarrow is something he designed when he was in college. Now, probably 35 years later, we still see elements of that same design in the Dyson vacuums. Took him 5,126 efforts to make the Dyson bagless zero suction loss vacuum work. 5,126 times. What's that tell you?
He's really dedicated.
He's a dedicated guy. He's a thinker. He's an engineer's engineer and wants to figure out how to solve problems. And he's done it more recently with the air blade dryer. This is the put your hands in dryer, as well as the bladeless fan. How do you have a fan that does not have blades? Okay, So it's compressed air that is pushed out of the rim itself. So the air comes out of this region. Pretty novel. So in that way, particularly with the dual cyclone vacuum cleaner, he was trying to get rid of bags. That way you did not have an issue of having to empty bags and bags being partially filled, and he was also trying to improve the vacuuming capability where you didn't have loss and suction loss, and so something that worked very well, and has done it with this small handheld device. These are not inexpensive items. Oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we think that we need to be cheap, that we need to develop things that are inexpensive. And from their inception and through today, these are expensive items. The handheld vacuum, $200. The air blade, I believe, is about $1,200. So not cheap, but highly effective and very different than other things that are in the market. So the third element, this tolerance for ambiguity, is really recognizing that you need to understand that markets change. And the business that you're in now may not be the business you're going to be in forever. So our friend here is wearing a Coke t-shirt. Anybody not drink soda? You just don't drink soda as a matter of preference or principle. Okay? So 5. Anybody not had a soda in the last 3 days? So a bigger number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Arguably a third to maybe 40% of you. It's no good for Coca-Cola, right? You're their target customer base. What do?
Bottled water.
They start Dasani.
Oh, they have so many companies.
What else do they do?
Minute Maid,
Powerade. They buy Minute Maid. Do juice.
vitamin water.
Is vitamin water theirs now?
I thought they
Not sure about vitamin water, but I know that people know Honest Tea.
Yes.
Hey, Honest Tea.
I know the son of the
Seth's. Okay. Yeah, so started in Bethesda or Chevy Chase, University of Maryland grad, started Honest Tea, making it in his basement, sold it to Coca-Cola for $580 million, maybe. So in that way, again, Coca-Cola recognizes that markets change. Coca-Cola recognizes that people aren't going to drink soda forever. People are going to want water and tea and juice and other products. They create some. They buy others. But as entrepreneurs, we need to recognize, again, that things change as well. And that, again, this aspect of going to where the market's going is something to think about. And so to understand in the research that, you want to have some sense of where things are going in the near term and in the long term. So again, chart's a little small, but the element to recognize here is that the pace of change from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, 8,000 years, from industrial to light bulb, 120, from light bulb to moon landing, 90, from moon landing to internet, 22, from internet to human genome sequenced, 9. So 8,000, 120, 90, 22, 9 for these major technological changes. Computers, looking at processing power. We see this kind of exponential growth. And when you look at the first, well, not even the first, let's go back. Okay, so since when I was born. So Apple II did roughly 100,000 in this measure of computing power. And to give you a sense of scale, from the late 70s to today, we've gone from 100,000 to 10 billion.
That's a jump.
So this is an exponential curve. So we've gone from 100,000 to 10 billion in my lifetime. When this continues to grow, the expectation, again, we're along in here, so the expectation is that in the next year or two, we're going to have computers that surpass the brain power of a mouse.
Wow. Really smart.
So in a year and a half.
Mouses are that small.
And surpassing the brain power of a human 8 years after that. And by 2045, a computer can surpass the brain power of all brains on Earth combined.
Someone's got a time machine to stop that.
So, is this fantasy? Is this fiction?
I hope.
What do you think? Fantasy, fiction? Possible. Again, how many channels did I watch? 4.
3,000.
So, again, things change. When you think of, again, your typical day and a grandparent's typical day, when they were your age, what did they not have? They did not have cell phones for sure, and may not have had phones, period. Did not have TV. We're not talking cable TV. Again, TV is a 1940s, 1950s era. So when your grandparents were early teens, you do the math, probably didn't have TV, period. Had radio. So when we think about such things, and you think about industries and markets and businesses that you want to go into, I'm not necessarily advocating that all of you should go out and start figuring out how to build printers that can print human organs. But recognize that there's a short-term opportunity for things and a long-term opportunity, and how to be aware of those at a minimum. That way you're not the next border Circuit City and you're just kind of caught by surprise. There are different things to think about and consider when we begin looking at these elements of motivation to beware of. And we'll talk about a couple of these. So overconfidence, as we mentioned, is kind of too much of a good thing. We want to be confident. We want to be optimistic. But we want to make sure, again, that we are well prepared. And it's not uncommon that things take twice as long as you think. It's not uncommon that things take twice as much money as you think when you're working on entrepreneurial ventures. You're doing things that are unpredictable. If you were going to walk to the building next door, and you've done it 100 times before, you know how long it takes. If you're going to walk backwards with your eyes closed, it's going to take longer. And you're not exactly sure how long it's going to take because you've probably never done it before. So that's, again, the difference of doing an entrepreneurial venture, particularly one that's innovative, is it's new, it's unknown, and it's hard to estimate the resources. And it's easy to be overconfident. Also recognize there's a danger with representativeness. What's your favorite color?
Red.
Red. So I did a study at the University of Maryland, and the favorite color of students is red.
Bias.
Is that a true statement?
Could be.
Is it a true statement, what I said?
Yeah.
I did a study. Now, I did a poor study
Yeah.
of a sample size of 1.
But it's still true.
It's true, perhaps not accurate. So in that way, again, if you ask your friend if they like your venture, if you ask family if they like your idea, beware taking that as being accurate. We want to know, do prospective customers like our idea? And we want to talk to those customers very early in the process. Counterfactual thinking occurs more often in younger entrepreneurs in that there's an anxiousness to act and there's a fear of regret. I have an idea. It's the best idea I've had so far. And so I'm tempted to really go all in on it and make a go of it because I'm fearful that I may miss out. I may not have another idea this good again. So I'm very anxious. In summary, when you think about entrepreneurial motivation, there are 3 fundamental questions that can help assess that. One is, do you have a high self-efficacy? Do you exhibit high cognitive motivation? And what is your tolerance for ambiguity? And what we find with these is that you may not necessarily score off the charts on each and every one of these, but it begins to give you some framing of either where you may sit within each one of these, where there might be opportunity for improvement, or where you might already score very high or very effectively in each of those. And also with the motivations, what we see here is that it really starts by understanding what your own motivations are. And so in that context, these questions can be assistive and guiding in understanding entrepreneurial motivation as well.